Hello, friends. Samuel Graham doing TCGs again. We've got another throwback, a little bit of a semi obscure one this time. So, I looked at the Star Trek CCG from Decipher on one of the previous ones that I looked at. And so I've mentioned the Star Wars CCG, which was a fairly big deal until Decipher Company lost the license. What they didn't lose was their own game engine, which they tried to turn into um, a new IP, Wars. So what they did was they streamlined the game system a little bit. Originally, the Star Wars game had a dark side and light side, so you just built a dark side deck or a light side deck, and there was no mixing, no sort of like fringe non-aligned characters or something like that that you could handle. What Wars did was they took the existing system of the locations that you played the game at, including, hey, win your share of $10,000 cash. I feel like I missed the tournament. Um, So this game used locations that you deployed over the course of the game. You basically started with one in play, both players did, and then they could add more as the game went on. The original Star Wars game only had little light side or dark side tickers on the locations. We'll probably see one of this version of the locations here. I can show what I'm talking about. So yeah, so this was kind of an interesting thing. This existed in basically a sci-fi version of our solar system. So it's a helpful game. So this was the second set of the game. Can barely see that. There's a common and card number 35. So by that same count, we've got a rare there. Then a couple of uncommons. Okay, so here's an example of one of the kinds of sites. So this is like a space site. They called it a sector in this game. I think it was a system in Star Wars. So you've got the little box down here and a box down there. In Star Wars, they were specifically colored red or blue. Red for dark side, blue for light side. So you knew which side was supposed to face you. In this game, they're all essentially generic, so that this card could be in any deck, and it didn't specifically mean light or dark. It was just how many resources you got per turn was the total of all the sets. And I bent this one. Well, the thing they did differently was some locations in this game added a faction symbol. So I'll see if I had one from this faction. Perfect. Had a couple in a row. So if you have one of these in play, you could play a card that had one dot, one of the matching symbol. But if you only had this one in play, you couldn't play this one. You needed two. You didn't have to like spend it per se, so you didn't have to have like that many for everything you played. You just basically had to have a minimum in play of the number of symbols on the card. So this was a starship, like a starfighter for one of the alien races. The blue ones were the She, Geisha bot. So the Mavericks were yellow. They were sort of like a tech punk, like it. What's the word I'm looking for? Basically cyborgy kind of stuff, enhancing themselves. These were the Quay, one of the other alien race. We got another location, Venus. So again, our solar system. This is where corporations kind of built yachts and stuff. Red are called the Gonjan. They were a Mars, like a group that had colonized Mars, but they were Japanese descent primarily. Field report is our rare. Gray cards like this could be played by any faction. There's another Starfighter for the Mavericks. Eavesdropper. Little, like a ground vehicle, sort of like more like an air speeder, something like that from Star Wars. Technically a ground vehicle. And this was Earth faction, the green one. So the whole concept behind the game was that a rip opened in our solar system. The other two races came through, and the resource that they were looking at, called trigenium, I believe, kind of started mutating people, kind of X-manning people, basically, turning them into more or less Jedi. Dance of Steel is the rare there. So that's what made things go, is all of the factions had their own disagreements with each other. The Shi had been mercilessly attacking the Quay for a long time. The Quay are pretty ruthless themselves. Earth is like the corporate big military faction. Max Retros. And the Mavericks kind of were like, went out into like the asteroid belt and stuff like that and set up asteroid bases and that kind of thing. And then the Gonjan, like I said, they had colonized Mars, and they were kind of the Japanese had left Earth and created their own location. Spineslinger is a rare character. So in this game, you've got characters, you've got locations. So you would kind of play site, and I only have that one, but you would play site and like the sector locations across the table on a board, and then you would play each individual. Your characters had to deploy to one of the locations, or like your ships had to deploy to a location. A character, if the ship had capacity, I'll see if I can find a ship here in a second. Few escape. Interrupts, that's the same kind of like effects and abilities and that kind of card now. Interrupts and effects were, and assets were the same kind of thing, that just modified other things or like sat back in your reserve row kind of deal. So like Zocho Interceptor here, one of the Gonjan ships, says ship capacity 0. So this one you couldn't play a character on. It has no capacity. This one has capacity 1, so you could have one character on the ship. Different stuff like that. And then we'll look at this specific card. So this was the number of the little ribbons, the light ribbons that I said were the energy that you got per turn. See if I can find one quick. So per turn, you would go through your deck and create a resource pile with however many of these you had plus 1. So this cost 4 to play. 5 power, 2 tactics. So basically at 4 tactics at a particular battle, you got to flip a card for Destiny. Destiny was what it was called. And when you flipped a card, you were looking for this number that added to your power, made you stronger there. And then defense, of course, is if somebody's trying to shoot you with a weapon, you would use that. And the ships and vehicles use largely the same statistics. So we got our first foil. They're usually 5 or 6 foils, but so this is a Gonjan Kaizen. So Kaizen were the Trigenium affected people, the Jedi-ish folk. So this was a Kaizen. As long as a character has a weapon beneath him, he can't be damaged. So damage in this game, basically damage was you've been hit, and at the end of the battle, if you're in a battle, it goes to your discard pile. So like damage means hit. So this is actually a pretty powerful ability. he can only be like voluntarily sacrificed to soak up battle damage. He can't be killed by your opponent. Terms of the deal. Pray I don't alter them further. So that's kind of how it works. Is in a battle you would just add up all the power of your ships or people, depending on whether you in space. We got another foil. Sharia Koreg, another Kaizen, a human faction Kaizen. Okay, this is a pretty powerful one too. When this character enters play, you may look at the top card of any reserve. If you do, they put that card beneath its owner's reserve. So reserve is like the main draw deck. So if you are planning to start a battle, you could look at the top card, which is what would be flipped for a battle destiny. And if it's a really high number, you can make them stick it at the bottom. Shadow Warriors, which could be really handy. Another Venus location. I always thought that one was cool. So when you have a battle, you would just total up all the power there, add any destiny if your tactics were over 4 or over, or you had any. Oh, so here's a capital ship, capacity 4. Like this is one of the big powerful ships for the Quay. Characters don't count towards its capacity. That's pretty cool. So again, with the battle, so once you draw destiny, that adds to your power. But even if you lose the battle, that destiny forces your opponent to lose that much damage in what they called attrition. So you could still kind of work on whittling your opponent down, literally whittle them down by attrition, if you could keep conflicts going, which I always thought was a cool system. So even if you just got stomped, if you had enough to get a battle destiny, there was a little bit of a cushion, like to keep yourself in the game a little bit. That was always neat. We've got another foil, a foil character, not in fact a Kaizen this time. Maverick. This is Battle Axe Boden. So she actually has an ability called piloting. So if she's on a ship, it's power and tactics +2, which is a pretty good boost. There were lots of boosts like that in the old Star Wars game too, where a pilot would make a ship stronger. You know, really good cards like Darth Vader or Luke Skywalker, that kind of thing, might add 3. 2 was pretty standard for most of the pilots. Cat's Claw. Pompeii, a big Earth capital ship. So yeah, this was one of those games that they were like, okay, we've put a lot of work into this game engine. Let's not give it up. It ended up only lasting 2 sets. This second set was the last. But I really enjoyed it, especially I enjoyed the. Got another foil. It's an interrupt this time. You cause attrition plus that much. That's a decent card for the game. Because again, the attrition is, you know, that damage you do regardless. But yeah, so it was one of those where they tried really hard because they had put so much effort into the engine to revamp it, streamline it, and they succeeded. Honestly, as a game itself, this was a better. I love this card, Joker Danico, with her sword, quite ending somebody. I always liked her. You know, I loved that old Star Wars game, but this definitely, to me at least, I thought this was a better game from the streamlines. If they had been able to do like a Star Wars 2.0 kind of thing, there's that same card that we got a foil of a second ago in non-foil. If they had been able to do that, I think that would have been brilliant. That said, I like what they tried to do with this one. They actually had, short stories and some fiction to go along with it by some pretty decent authors. I can't remember all of them, but the one that immediately springs to mind, another pretty cool Akwe Kaizen. It's just an awesome looking card. Michael A. Stackpole, who has written, I believe, quite a bit of fantasy. The only stuff of his that I've read, though, was his contributions to the old Star Wars extended universe, and I always enjoyed his writing there. But so, like, they had some relatively big, prominent people writing for him. So it's a shame non-foil Battle X Baden. It's a shame that the game itself didn't really catch on. Now, part of that was there's a whole big story for Decipher that they got kind of screwed by embezzlement. They had some issues internally that kind of brought piloting 3. So, like I was talking about, so he must be a really great pilot. So there was some pretty catastrophic stuff, like a lot of money that disappeared, was misappropriated, mishandled, that brought Decipher kind of to its knees. Changlin. If your vehicle here is destroyed, you may put that on your used pile instead. So another thing about this game system is you essentially had 4 piles. In Star Wars, I think it's just called energy pile in this one. So you have your reserve deck, which is like your main draw deck or your main deck. Then you had the little swooshes, these guys from the locations, the stuff you flipped over to have as resources, that became your force pile in Star Wars. I think just energy pile in this game. That was how much you had to use. And at the end of your turn, you could also draw that. You had to use that to initiate combat. You had to use that to deploy your characters. I'm going to actually scoot the commons and uncommons out of the way and give us a little bit more rare and foil space here. Rousing Leap. And when you paid the cost from your energy pile, it went to what is called your used pile. And if you are, I figure a lot of people kind of got here from Flesh and Blood videos that I've done, mostly doing box openings and stuff of that. Long Gods is a rare. So how the cards that you pitched to pay a cost go up under your deck at your draw deck at the end of the turn. The used pile was the same way. So there was a cycle of it. So you activated it to the energy pile, used it to the used pile, and then it went under. And then, as you'd imagine, the discard pile was called. There's the non-foil, non-focused Tanaru Hari. We got the foil of him earlier. It was the lost pile in this game. So you'll have things that say, like if a character got hit, referencing Tanaru Hari again, if they were getting defeated, getting destroyed, they go to the lost pile. So what that one card a second ago was saying was, instead of the lost pile, it goes to your used pile. There's a non-foil Sharia Koreg. So basically, instead of it going to your lost pile, it just immediately recirculated back into your deck. So anything that did that kind of stuff was pretty cool. Like this fighter right here, the Tamon Interceptor, when it's destroyed, put it on top. You may put it on top of its owner's used pile. Stuff like that. That Gonjin faction particularly had a lot. They also had these giant robots called Nobots. This is a weapon for a Nobot, but there's a picture of it right there. Just a ridiculous blaster on it that also boosts its defense. I hope I pull a Nobot. That'd be cool to show. But yeah, there were a lot of things. Like the lore was actually kind of interesting. The factions were well defined and interesting. It just didn't. Oh, that's a big old ship. So they also had. I'm gonna come back to that one. See if there's anything else cool here. So this one. So you see, it's got a stat block. It says lose a stockpile asset. So there are certain cards that are just labeled stockpile asset. Those are kind of the ones that play to your support area kind of deal. And invert this ship. So if you invert it, it completely changes stats. So it's 1 power, 1 tactics, 2 defense, like a pretty weak ship, right? Or when you flip it, it's 4-5-5. So that makes it a much more effective combat ship for a battle. A friend of mine and I, probably almost 2 years ago now, we pulled this game out and played again. I've actually got a few. There's another foil, Rousing Leap. I love the art for this game. I always thought the art was cool. Well done. The lore was cool. It just wasn't Star Wars, and it kind of just hit at the wrong time. Where nobody was interested in kind of it's just another card game. It's generic. What are we gonna do? Even though it was built on an established system by nobody knew the bad stuff was going on, by a fairly well-respected game company at the time. It just did not stick it out. What's this one? Oh, is it each? So there were capital ships. So like this one, Zocho Interceptor belonged to the carrier Zocho. So each one kind of had its specific gimmick. So the Tamon was the one that recirculated cards. Zocho related fighters all gave bonus power. So it was kind of cool how they worked that into the game too. Like each ship had its specialty and its fighters had their specialty. Ooh, another pretty potent Kaizen for the Shi. Power +1 for each of your support icons. That's strong. And as long as it's at a site, your opponent causes attrition -1 for each of your support icons. That's a really strong card. There's the Pompeii again. But yeah, this was one of those games that I don't know. I've always felt like it deserved a better shake. Maybe just because I liked it, so I'm biased. Jylen Wraith, a human faction guy, Earth faction. But and honestly, it was the first game that I say competitively. It was local game store, but it was the first game that I really tried to play regularly, like at an LGS. So it's got my love for that. But yeah, let me know if you have tried this game out at any point. If you played it back for the very brief time it was around, anything like that. If you've enjoyed this, if you kind of like that throwback to old nostalgic TCGs, I've got a few more boxes of this. I actually opened a bunch to try and complete my set for this set fairly recently. And so I bought a whole bunch of boxes and just opened the ones I needed and stopped opening them at this point. But I thought, it might be fun to kind of go back and look at some of the old games that I enjoy and share those as well. So that's what we got here. This is the Wars TCG from Decipher. Um, Short lived. Let's see, what was the copyright date on 2005 for this set? I can't remember if the first set was 2000. I think the first set came out in 2004, and then this set came out in 2005. So it was very short lived. But I really enjoyed it, and like I say, I built a few decks a couple years ago again that I would love to like actually play some more of it, which is hard when I've already got new games that I'm trying to get on the table too and haven't been able to yet. But it's good times. Anyway, any feedback is always appreciated. Let me know if you ever checked this game out, if you are interested in seeing more. It's good stuff. Thank you very much for your time and have a great rest of the night as always. Bye, y'all.